Hello everyone, Rachel Weaver here. I am on faculty and staff at Lighthouse Writers Workshop. I've been doing a series of interviews called The Story of a Book, in which I ask debut writers to tell us the story of how their books came to be. So today I have R.L. Maizes with us. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So she is the author of a collection of short stories called We Love Anderson Cooper that came out last July, and the author of a novel called Other People's Pets, which is due out this July. So I'm going to make your screen big here and turn it over to you to tell us the story of how these books came to be.
Thank you. So I was writing short stories for about 10 years. And I finally began to have some better publications. I had a publication in electric literature, and I had a publication in on NPR. And so I began to feel like I could probably get the interest of an agent, and that it would be worth putting together a collection at that point. So I put together a collection, and I showed it to Erica Krause, who's the, of course, marvelous Lighthouse teacher. And I waited for her to tell me, how fantastic it was. And so she had it for about a month, and then she gave me a critique, and she definitely liked some parts of it, but she also thought it could be improved. And so I took the critique that she gave me, and I took another year where I revised all of the stories. And, I knew what people say, which was, you can't get a collection published. You certainly can't get it published with an agent or with a big publisher. But when someone tells me I can't do something, that's immediately going to make me a little stubborn and want to do it, at least to try. I figured I would try. So I started sending the collection out, and indeed, a lot of the agents I sent it to said, we like it, it's entertaining, we enjoyed it, but there's no market for short story collections. So, and they said, come back to us when you have a novel. Well, I didn't have a novel. That's not really true. I had a novel in a drawer, but it wasn't a novel that I wanted to revisit. And so I decided, okay, if that's what it's going to take, then I'm going to write a novel for my short story collection. And as I was waiting to hear back from agents, which takes forever and is frustrating, so the perfect thing to do is to actually have another project that you're working on. So I started to write a novel. And the good thing about that was then I could include it in my query letter. I could start to tell agents, here's this collection, and I'm also working on a novel, and here's what the novel is about. And after about 4 months of querying, I heard from my agent, who's Victoria Sanders, and she loved the collection, and she loved the idea for the novel. And she asked to see what I had on the novel, and I had about 40 clean pages at that point. I probably had more, but that was what I felt comfortable sharing. And I sent it to her, and she loved the novel. And what she said was, I signed with her, and she said, write 100 pages of the novel that you feel are strong, and then we'll go out with the 2 books together. So I spent a couple of months writing 100 pages of the novel, and I gave it to her, and then I waited. And a week went by, and 2 weeks went by. And of course, the longer time that goes by, the more nervous I got. And in fact, after about 3 or 4 weeks, I got a letter, and the letter wasn't from my agent. And that's the thing. I adore Victoria, but that's the thing. When she has good news to give you, you will hear directly from her. But when it's bad news, you will always hear from someone else in the office. And so the fact that the email came, she works with an editor, and the fact that the email came from this editor, my heart sank just seeing who the email came from. And so the email was from this editor who's lovely. And it really was kind of everything that was wrong with the 100 pages. And just reading it, I knew that she was right. The main things I would say that she felt were wrong were that Other People's Pets is a novel that involves a lot of burglaries. It's about an animal empath who is raised to be a burglar and who takes care of animals in the homes she robs. So there's a lot of burglaries. And one of the things they said was these burglaries don't have enough suspense. And as soon as I saw that, I thought that's actually exactly right. And the other thing was they said that we don't, there's not enough heart in it. We don't love the main character enough yet. And we really have to love her, especially if she's going to be a burglar. We have to really love her. And so I knew they were right. And I went back to Victoria and I said, okay, you're right. And I tried to do this too fast. I rushed it, which is never a good idea with writing. So what I want to do is I want you to send out the collection by itself, and I'm going to take my time with the novel and give it the time that it deserves. And she said, fine. And so, but it was the summer and she didn't want to send it out during the summer. So still a lot of time went by before she was ready to submit the collection. And at that time, she still said, I still want to see at this point what you have with the novel. You've had, I probably had 4 or 5 months had gone by where I could fix a lot of the problems and write more and write slower. So I sent her the new 100 pages, and I honestly thought she was just going to send out the collection. And she sent what I thought was the collection out on a Friday, and we had 3 offers on Monday. So that was wonderful. It was a really great feeling. And come to find out, she has sent it out with 50 pages of the novel, and that what the book deal ultimately that we made on Wednesday was for both books. So now I had a deadline for the novel, which was 2 years later. So that's, I don't know if that's enough time or not, but the truth is I liked having a deadline. I think, I ended up for the next 2 years working 6 days a week on that novel, but it was very motivating to have that deadline. I also knew if it wasn't completely ready and as ready as I wanted it to be, I could have gotten an extension. So, but I like writing for deadlines. And and then the way it works when you do a 2-book deal is that the publisher still has to accept that second book. They don't have to publish a book they haven't seen. So that was a little nerve-wracking. I turned in the novel, and a couple of weeks went by, and then I was super happy to find out that they liked it and they wanted to publish it. That said, they had a lot of notes for me too. And then I went through a number of edits with the editor to get the book into the shape that it needed to be in order to be published. And of course, it was a much better book for those edits. And I want to back up a little bit and say too that I also had Erica look at the book before, once I had a complete draft, pretty early on actually, long before the deadline. I had her look at it when I had a complete draft. And again, I wasn't expecting, I knew what to expect by now, which was I getting a great critique. And in fact, she gave me, I think, a 20-page single-spaced critique for this novel. And that critique taught me how to write a novel. And so it was my blueprint, in terms of the problems that existed in the novel. And then, of course, I had to come up with my own solutions, but at least I knew really, honestly, how to write a novel based on that outline that she gave me. Not an outline for the book, but an outline for what a novel needs. And now it's coming out, which is wonderful. And that's the story of how my books came to be.
That's awesome. Thank you. I've gotten one of those super long, detailed, single-spaced critiques from Erica on my work as well. Very useful.
Very useful.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering a couple things. I wonder what was unexpected about this whole process for you? What was something that when you from that moment that you were like, I'm writing a book. I'm going to put all these short stories together into a book. What were some things that came up for you in that process or in the publication process that was that you didn't anticipate?
I think I was so happy the day that the books sold that I didn't understand. And again, I didn't understand how difficult the process of actually selling books is, and especially a collection. So, I think when you're a writer, for all those years that I was writing those stories, my goal was to write some really good stories, to hopefully get them published in literary magazines even eventually to have a collection, I never thought about that period of time that would be when it was actually in the marketplace. And, we got some lovely reviews. NPR reviewed it, and it was a really beautiful review that made me super happy. Um, but it didn't sell, I would say, in the way that I had hoped for it to sell. And so that was it was both disappointing, and we still have a paperback coming out. So I'm still hoping that, obviously, at a slightly cheaper price point, more people will discover it. Plus, with having a novel coming out, more people will know me. But I think just the ups and downs of the publication process itself, some wonderful things happen, and you get excited, and then some disappointing things happen. So I think, and we got other reviews too. I mean, Celadon worked very hard. I don't think they neglected the book. They worked hard, and we got a lot. The book appeared in a lot of reviews, but it's still hard to convince the public to buy a short story collection by an unknown author. It's just hard. So I think that was probably the main surprise. And then, to be honest, I thought to myself, well, it's okay, because I'm going to have a novel coming out, and a novel is going to be an easier sell. And then, of course, COVID-19. So, I'm going to stop having expectations, because this is a bit of a tricky environment to have a novel come out, and bookstores are closed right now. The book isn't out yet anyway, but still, a lot of media doesn't really want to hear about books right now. Some media does, but a lot of media just really wants to talk about COVID-19. So we'll just see what happens. I'll do everything I can. I'm sure Celadon, they want to sell books, and so they'll do everything they can. And I think the most surprising thing was, that you really have to temper expectations, because you just don't know what life is going to bring. And I'm thrilled to have written 2 books, and I'm thrilled that people will read them. But, if the dream is, being a New York Times bestseller, or even, or anything on that scale, that may not happen. It certainly hasn't happened for me yet, and I have to be aware that it may not happen. So.
Yeah, when my book was coming out, my husband said something that I've thought of so many times since. He said, you need to decide what the definition of success is for you. And then hold on to that, and everything else that happens beyond that is great, or not great, or whatever. It's just a part of the roller coaster, but if you can really define what success is, and the more I thought, sort of the better off you're going to be, and we're all going to be in the house.
Right.
Right. And once I thought of that, really the level, like what was successful to me was just finishing, right? Like going through the 7 years or 6 years, however long I spent working on it, and getting through all the different drafting stages and all the different levels of rejection before it was accepted. And then just holding it in my hand as a book, right? Because I love books, and to see it was probably the most satisfying thing of all the things, but that's hard. It's easy to say that, but it can be very hard to hold on to that in the midst of all of the ups and downs of publication, I think.
Right. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think if you write a book and finish a book, almost whether it's published or not, that's such a huge accomplishment. And I have to say, in my life, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Writing the novel was the hardest thing. And I went to law school. I mean, I practiced as a lawyer. And I'm telling you, practicing law doesn't hold a candle to writing. It just doesn't. I mean, it's so if you finish a book, I think both the perseverance and the dedication to the craft that it takes to get there is something that you can really, I agree with you. I think it's something you can hold in your life as a tremendous success.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for telling us your story. I really appreciate you letting me ask you these questions and take the time for this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.